Welcome to the Bookistrator, where I share the stories I love through illustration. I hope you all have a cozy blanket or a nice snack because today's video is currently the longest one on the channel. No measly 10-minute videos today. Today's book is The Bone Houses by Emily Lloyd Jones. I cannot express to you how much I love this book, how much one of my friends and I bonded over it, or how much time I spent coming up with what I wanted to draw for this channel. Hopefully, as you watch the illustration unfold and see all the references and words I have to share, you will get an inkling. The Bone Houses is one of those rare heart books, one that felt written just for me. It's filled with Welsh culture, mythology, and even a bit of the language. The two main characters are incredible and reflect and contrast each other wonderfully. This book is spooky, full of tense moments, and bursting with the chilly breath of the fall season. There's a phenomenal goat in this book who is in fact the greatest of all time. It's a coming-of-age story, a quest to solve a problem, a tangential zombie book, but at its core, this book is about monsters, both those out and inside of ourselves. With that, let's get into the illustration. As you watch this time-lapse, you may have noticed that my piece here is being created at a much faster pace than usual. There is a very good reason for that. In a few minutes, I'll abandon this piece and start a different one. It's more extreme than when I needed to start over in my spindle and dagger illustration. This isn't a computer error, this time at least, but a pivot I made when I discovered something awful. I hated what I was doing. This didn't feel like the normal "it's ugly and I don't like it" feeling I get at some point with nearly everything I draw. This was a fear and a loathing of a project that I dreaded returning to. Part of that was feeling like I had to make something perfect, to fit how much I loved the book it's based on. Part of that was the dozens of sketches I'd already drawn to get to this place. Was it still wrong, I asked myself? I'd already tried so many other things, and now I'm really going to start over again? It wasn't an easy decision. It felt like a waste of time, especially now that I record each piece I do to share with you all. But I'm glad I made the hard call. But Amber, I can hear you asking, what is this book about? I'm so glad you asked. The Bone Houses is the story of a young woman named Aderin ver Gwyn, or Ryn for short. Ryn and her siblings are making it on their own, alone now that both of their parents are gone. Ryn runs the town graveyard, burying the dead and tending to the area. The only problem being sometimes the bodies don't stay in the ground. Sometimes they come back to harass the living. And when they do, Ryn comes with her axe to break them up and put them down for good. But when a young man new to the village camps near the woods one night, Ryn is almost too late to save him. The bodies, called bone houses, are more active than ever since the stranger came, and Ryn wants to know why. Together, Ryn and the man, Ellis of Caer Abrahen, set off into the forest, where the monsters are coming from, to put a stop to the danger inching ever closer to Ryn's peaceful life. In the piece at this stage, you can see Ryn. The girl sitting in the back. Ellis is on the ground, laying on his bag, with his cloak as a blanket, and in the foreground is the goat. She's not given a name in the book, sadly. Ryn explains because she'd been meant for eating, they never named her, but when her little sister falls in love with the creature, Ryn can no longer stomach the idea of killing her. Yet she remains unnamed. In my head, I call her Gafr, which literally just means goat in Welsh. For some reason, that feels more like a name than just calling her goat. I wanted to try something a little different with this illustration. Instead of doing a sketch and then line art, I drew like I would in my sketchbook, or when I used to paint with watercolor. The sketch is the line art in this case, and I loved adding texture and lines to everything, not letting anything become too finished or precious. I wanted this piece to feel more traditionally created in those ways, and for me that was definitely the most successful part of this iteration. I chose a chunkier, toothier brush here to achieve that graphite feeling I'm used to on paper, and was really liking how that looked. The main issue with the piece was the composition. It felt claustrophobic to me. All the characters crammed in right at the front of the canvas, stacked on top of one another like stickers, not like bodies with form. Earlier you saw me shrinking and scooting Ryn further and further back, trying to make room for her legs. Even here, there wouldn't be room for them. Eithlis would have to be partially lying on her feet for her to sit that close. I had the same problem with the goat, who would have been sitting on Eithlis's legs or hip for her to be that close. I have this bad habit of making things too close together. It comes from preferring to draw only characters, not backgrounds, so my skills at creating convincing depth is still pretty rudimentary. I feel like the trees are a pretty good distance, but because I wanted to make each of the three characters so large in the foreground, they're literally tripping over one another. I started with that blue layer first when I got to color, thinking it would be a cool idea to do the color of the lighting first, before adding the flats. It was going to be a night scene. And then make that blue layer a multiply or other layer style on top. I was really being experimental with this piece, which was fun, but I didn't have a good foundation for all that frosting. This is where I got to. This is where I decided I needed to either massively overhaul this painting or start over. I still didn't realize, however, what the main issue was. I figured it was because I didn't like how Eithlis was looking. I didn't like the goat's beard. The only thing I actually liked at this point was Rin's face. The trees weren't making sense. It was just frustrating to look at. I talked to several art friends about it and some family members. They all encouraged me to either push through or start over. I knew what I needed to do, but it felt wrong to do so. So I did. I scrapped the previous painting and started over. I threw around a lot of different ideas when I decided I was going to do a video for this book. In school, I used one of those bubble web charts when I needed to solve something particularly difficult in my art projects. I use this when I do book covers too, to try and figure out what the core ideas, themes, objects, settings, and characters are for a book. It lays out some different directions I could take and puts them into piles that make more sense to me. Some of the key objects in this book are a broken Welsh love knot spoon, Rin's axe, Eithlis's quill and maps, and a mysterious black cauldron. I toyed with drawing skeletons, the bone houses themselves, and spooky creatures stalking our group during the night. Then, maybe a pile of them under the black cauldron. This book is spooky and sometimes dark, so drawing something that fit along with those ideas seemed right. I liked the idea of drawing all the most important objects together in the cauldron, kind of like a cool collection of what this story entails, seen through its most important items. But the more I drew those things, the quicker I realized that what I actually wanted to draw was the character themselves. But how? I liked the idea of Rin and Eithlis standing back to back, both with an important item to them. Or maybe relaxing together, Eithlis working on a new map while Rin rests after digging a new grave. Or perhaps the two of them with the goat, just some simple character art of the three of them, about to go off on their journey. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized there was a scene I just could not get out of my head. It was the same one I'd tried and failed before. Our exhausted trio getting some much-needed rest in the forest, part of the way to their destination. But first, let me back up a moment and explain a little bit more about these characters themselves. I'll start with the goat. I had to redraw her here as she was feeling too bunny-adjacent? Lion? I don't know, but something felt off the first time. Goat is the family food turned pet. When the bone houses start to attack the village, the goat is killed in the skirmish. Rin's little sister is devastated. Rin and Eithlis go on their journey and are surprised one night when the goat appears, resurrected for the night just like all of the other bone houses. She follows along with them, catching up part way through each night, as she can't move during the day. Goat is fiercely loyal and an amazing guard. She has come to be a token of fortitude between me and my friend Rachel. We read this book back to back in 2023, and ever since then it's been one of our favorite topics. When she's having a tough day at work, I'll draw a little bone goat on a sticky note or scrap of paper for her. In 2024, I painted the goat for her with watercolor and colored pencils on wood for her birthday. This year, I got her a goat stuffed animal, which she keeps in her office as a stress toy and companion. Thank you to Emily, the author, for giving us the bone goat. She's our favorite character. I based her design on the Welsh Llandudno goats. Have you heard about them? During the lockdown in Wales in 2020, 122 goats invaded the town of Llandudno to eat the hedges and flowers there. Instead of finding them annoying, the residents of the small town enjoyed watching them through their windows. The goats ran through the streets, jumped on stone fences, and delighted in having free reign of the area. I chose them to be the model for our bone goat here because not only are they super cool and unique looking, but they're doing exactly what I think she would do in their place, wreaking havoc, but in a funny and charming way. Next up, we have Eillis of Caer Aberhen, pronounced with the Welsh double L sound. Eillis grew up a ward in a castle, after being found in a forest as a very young child. Those who raised him were never his family, however, so when he was old enough, he set out on his own. He creates maps for a living. Wandering near Rin's home, he realizes this is the same place he was found as a child. Of course, he wants to help Rin figure out the source of the bone houses and potentially stop them from hurting people. More than that, he hopes there will be answers waiting for him. Where's his family? Did they want him? Did they abandon him? And why was he injured when he was taken all those years ago? There's a scar on his collarbone that still pains him to this day. Too much physical exertion, contorting weirdly, or bending wrong can leave him racked with pain. No amount of medication or help from doctors, as rudimentary as they would have been during this era, has helped ease the pain. The only solace he has found is in willow bark, which can stave off the worst of it when chewed, and holding still till the pain eventually ebbs. There are a couple of incredible lines I want to share here, when Rin finds out about his injury. To tell people is to invite pity, he said a bit wearily, or worse, advice. Advice? Rin asks. Herbs to try, he said, stretches, leeches one time. People cannot simply let me be. They have to find a way to fix me. You're not broken. I know, he said, but it's difficult to convince the world of that most of the time. That's why I've enjoyed solitude. People think pain makes me weak, or worse, strong. If I have to endure one more person telling me that I'm so strong simply for living, he shook his head. Rin knew something of pain. She'd seen enough of it. Death and pain were close companions, often twined around each other. Pain doesn't make a person weak or strong, she said. Pain just is. It's not a purifier, it's a part of living. That was from pages 212 to 213 for those curious. What do you think of this idea? Is pain a purifier? Are people with chronic health issues weak or strong? Neither? Whatever your thought on the subject, I was absolutely delighted that this passage exists in a fantasy book. Mental health is a topic on a lot of people's radars in the last couple of decades especially. There are wide discussions about it in media, in family units, and at schools. Having that topic in a fantasy book might feel out of place for some, but to me it felt absolutely necessary. Fantasy, to me, is a lens to view the world we're already living in. It can be a mirror that champions the similarities or shows us where we are still lacking in our respective lives. It can heighten differences and reveal truths that feel just as real, if not more than reality can. That's what I think, anyway. I bring this up because I have a family member who's struggled with her health for the past 40 years. She's had health crisis after health crisis, in and out of hospitals, and near death's door more times than I care to name. I won't lie, it's traumatizing watching someone you love so much suffer so greatly. It's taught me lessons that in some instances I would have preferred to remain ignorant of, but it's also taught me so much that I value. I would rather see her healthy and enjoying her life. She deserves it more than anyone I know, genuinely. But I'm also so grateful for the relationship her experience has forged for the two of us. My mother is a strong and selfless woman. Her pain is a large part of her life, but it does not define who she is. I believe that was what was meant by this passage I shared a moment ago. We are more than our scars. We are more than our successes. We all have infinite potential. Eillis is a rare and shining character to me. He's patient and respectful to all those he meets. His relationship with Rin grows during the book, but in a way that absolutely delighted me. It was built on mutual respect and anxiously caring for the other person going on the journey with them. It was so exciting how fresh their language towards each other felt to me. There were no wild declarations or posturing, just two young adults being open and honest with one another. Can you tell I loved this book? Finally, I'll move on to Rin herself. At the beginning of this video, I mentioned that Rin and her two siblings are now orphans. Her father was lost in a mining disaster and her mother to sickness. Rin now runs the family business, the town graveyard. She works hard at her duties of burying the dead with respect and tending to the area. She keeps the bone houses that shamble from the woods in check and watches out for her siblings. Rin is a dutiful person trying to keep her family afloat. She has a few precious objects I wanted to mention here. One is her axe. Now, I've never actually drawn an axe before. Swords, absolutely dozens of times, but a wood chopping axe? Never that I know of. So as my brother was heading down to his room, I asked for some advice. He fells harmful trees as one of his jobs, so he was able to draw what makes an axe an axe. You can see him drawing it out here as he explains it to me. For some reason in my version, I'd imagined the metal part of the tool going through the wood itself, or sitting in a little nook on the handle part. My brother explained that an axe head like that would snap the first time you used it. Instead, the metal part is built knowing that the wood will then be slotted in after, so tightly that it will hopefully never budge, no matter the force you use later. He also explained in his top-down view here that the forepoint of the head is more of a wedge shape than I'd been picturing. Not the blade of a sword, thicker and more durable as it's meant for splitting, not slashing. I guess I never really noticed or thought about it, so I'm grateful to him for being willing to draw it out for me. It reminded me of taking turns drawing in my sketchbook when we were little. Me drawing dragons or mermaids, him drawing trucks and old men with long beards. Keeping all of this in mind, and of course leaving his reference drawings up, I took another stab, at an axe myself. He watched me do it and made a few corrections, mostly about making the handle thicker near the head of the blade. This is the axe Vin uses to dismember bone houses when they stumble into town. She brings us on their trip, as they of course will be running into more. I also fitted her with a backpack for all the supplies like food and a change of clothes that she brought with her. I gave Eshlys a shoulder bag earlier, what he's using for a pillow here, thinking that would be less painful for him. Only one shoulder would have a strap pressing on it with this kind of sack, leaving his injured shoulder free. The next and most important item Rin brings with her is a spoon. Her half of a broken Welsh love knot spoon, to be specific. The other half belonged to her father, who she misses desperately. I looked at a lot of knotted Welsh spoons as I drew this. I wanted to go with a more complex design to really highlight how incredible the craftsmanship of these items are, but realized it would be too tiny to really make out much of it. Also, I knew it would be broken in half, which would lessen how much of the spoon you'd really be able to see anyways. So I went with a swirling design that would loop over into a heart or other rounded shape if it was put back together. Initially, I wanted it to be clutched in her fist here, but realized it would be easier to see if it was framed by her face and arm on the ground. Rin brings up a concept a few times I wanted to talk about here. She compares herself to monsters a lot. Her siblings are much better people in her eyes, and she uses these thoughts to understate everything she accomplishes in the story. There's a quote from page 243 that I think illustrates her growing philosophy. Monsters were unrestrained, unbound and beautiful in their destruction. They could be slain, but they would never truly be defeated. And perhaps, even back then, Rin thought that if she could love the monsters, then she could love those monstrous parts of herself. This is a fascinating snapshot of her mental state at this point in the book. She'd been hinting at this ideology earlier in the story, but it really takes shape in these two sentences. She admires monsters. The wild bone houses, the massive and terrible Avanc, a huge salamander dragon-like creature from Welsh mythology that lives in lakes, and even the awful people she's met. These dangerous beings were able to make their own decisions and see few, if any, consequences. They remained undefeated, even if slain. We see this over and over when it comes to her knocking the skeletons that shamble after her and Eshlys every evening. But it's more than this. If she can admire something that dangerous, something that intimidating, maybe even come to love those creatures, she could perhaps come to enjoy her own company. Rin holds herself to such an extreme height of perfection that nothing is ever good enough. She feels like a failure. She has done things in her past that she's ashamed of, and worries about the bad decisions she'll likely make in the future. Rin feels incredibly relatable to me in these moments of doubt. I think we can all be brutal with our own shortcomings. Should-haves and what-ifs can be harmful if used too much. Of course, it's good to look back on your own decisions with a critical eye to learn and grow from mistakes, but I hope there is also a dose of compassion in that moment for all of us. As I've been waxing poetic with diving deep into the inner turmoil of Rin, the illustration on screen has gained its base colors. I want to make sure that I have the local color, what you can see on screen currently, before I start adding any kind of texture or lighting. With this done, I then take a stab at working on the ground below our trio, just blocking out the dirt shapes. But then I feel like I have no idea what I'm doing, so I jump to coloring the line art before I try again. Sometimes it's just like that. I grabbed some good references this time, and that made the process a lot easier. As I'm working on this script, I'm having the horrifying realization that I never mentioned what this scene is I'm drawing. Almost 20 minutes into the video. Yikes, Amber. Yes, I said they're taking a break on their journey partway through the book, but a scene like that wouldn't really have stood out to me enough to need to draw it this much. As I said earlier, Eshes has a horrible scar on his collarbone that he got in his childhood. He doesn't know where it came from, just vague images and impressions. But ever since then, it's been a near constant source of pain. Just before this part in the book, our group here undergoes some very strenuous activity and life-threatening peril. I will not be saying more than that. You all know I hate spoilers. It's exhausting for Ellis, and the moment of calm afterward gives his body the chance to seize and spasm and fill his whole frame with agony. There isn't much he can do to help himself in this moment, except to lie very still and power through it mentally. Bryn helps him get situated and tends to their needs, starting a fire, gathering wood, making food, ready to help should Eshlis ask. She naps next to him and the goat for a while as well. This was the moment I wanted to capture. I'd never seen anything like it in a fantasy novel. His injury wasn't being brushed off. He didn't grit his teeth and carry on to the point of collapse. And Rin doesn't fight him on it either. There's, of course, a lot more nuance and story that I'm skirting around in order not to share too much, but this is the gist of what I want to share. This need to take a break is extremely inconvenient. They are racing to save Rin's village from the bone houses. They need to move during daylight to avoid those same dangers themselves. But instead of using the safety of the sunlight to continue on, they stop and rest. This is, of course, not groundbreaking, but it surprised me as an avid reader of the genre. It's not often that an author will halt the pace of a story to tend to the needs of an injured character. Sure, there are scenes where people take a breath to wrap a wound, share some dialogue, or maybe find a place to rest for the night. But this felt different. This felt purposeful. A moment to show just what it's like to live with chronic pain. It's hard. It's inconvenient. It doesn't take into account what you need to get done or what you would rather do. This realistic nod felt so important to me as someone who helps a person who is constantly struggling with their own pain. Thank you so much to the author Emily Lloyd Jones for this amazing moment that I just had to illustrate. Speaking of our wonderful author, she has 2 other books she's written in the same world. The 3 books are The Bone Houses, The Drowned Woods, and her newest book, The Wild Huntress. Both the Woods and Huntress books take place only a few months apart from one another. They also have a girl in common that goes from being a side character in only a few scenes to being the main lead in her own book. Bone Houses itself is considered by many to be a prequel. There are no overlapping characters or settings really, so it's hard to pinpoint where it would fit in a timeline. The only thing we really have to go on is the landscape itself. The country the story takes place in, based on a fantasy Wales, undergoes some extreme changes in the Drowned Woods that aren't apparent in Bone Houses. So that's the reading order I would suggest for any who are curious. I loved all 3 books so much, and I'm planning on doing some kind of illustration with the main cast from each story interacting with one another. And of course, the animal companions from each book would also be included. But that's future Amber's project. When I worked on that first version of this painting, the one I abandoned earlier in this video, I was making it a nighttime scene. But when I read the pages again, looking for any other details or imagery, I realized that when they rested, it was during the day, to make sure they were safe from the skeletons that came out only at night. This completely changed the direction I was going in, and I found myself at a total loss. Sure, I could just go with what I have here on the screen, but I felt something was missing. A few days later, I was playing on the hill with my nieces and nephew in the courtyard of my local library, when I noticed the shadows made by the flowering pear trees. I loved how the branches overlapped the grass and the small pockets of light that could be seen peeking through. I snapped a picture and got to work the second I got home. I would have included the picture here on the left in my reference column, but I lost it about a year ago, when my phone got wiped, after a dumb scam I fell for. So sadly, I can't share it here. But it was just the thing I needed. It adds so much context to the world around our 3 characters here that I wouldn't have had before. I'll share a few last thoughts as the illustration comes to a close. I loved this book. I loved how spooky it was. I loved the Welsh mythology nods. I loved the friendship between Ellis and Rhyn. I loved the bone goat and how much she has become a part of my relationship with my friend Rachel. I loved the introspection of the characters, and of course, I loved the chronic pain representation. This book was a heartwarming and lovely ride, and I'm so glad it had an odd and creepy title that enticed me to pick it up off the shelf. And with that, let's get a closer look at the finished piece. Phew! What a long video. Thank you so much for sticking around till the end. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed your time here and that I see you again for the next one. Just as a reminder, we're moving to an every other week posting schedule for the time being, so I can keep up with everything. So the next video will be on January 15th. Happy New Year to all of you and your loved ones, and here's hoping this year is wonderful for us all. Till the next one, bye!